So this is a question answer for spiritual seekers. We start with our usual prayer. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanao Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavai Tejasvinavaditam Astuma Vidvishavai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May that one protect us both. May that one nourish us both. May we work together with great vigor. May our study be illumined. May we not unnecessarily quarrel with each other. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. So as usual, I'll pause. That is, I'll mute my microphone so that you can formulate any questions. There is possibly one question that is sent to me by text, but if you have some questions, then I'll listen and we might be able to integrate the answers together.
Yes, for me, I've got one question, if possible. Because we had to work on the 17th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, and then two questions arise, and I want to be sure that in this chapter they describe the nature of the Shraddha. But is it for people, only for people who don't follow any spiritual path? And if we follow some kind of spiritual path, does it mean that we should go beyond the sattva way of developing Shraddha? And also the other point I completely don't understand is at the end, as you say, when you say Om Tat Sat, will it purify the austerities and everything we're doing if we're not sure to be completely pure in our intention?
Okay, so all very interesting questions. So for those, of course, the 17th chapter is a threefold faith in every aspect. So your first question, I think, was, is this for everybody? Everybody is a spiritual seeker. I can begin with that. And then we'll deal with this Om Tat Sat afterwards. So let's talk a little bit about seeking. So everything that you look for, everything that you seek will stand far away. You're here, whatever you look for, you haven't got immediately, and so you put everything at a distance. And if you do that, it will elude you. So we start off with one premise, that this is what you're looking for is only an apparitional seeking, because it is here already. That's the one lesson that Vedanta has to teach. Whatever you're looking for, you will find it immediately here, and many examples are given. People walk around with glasses on top of their head and ask, where are my spectacles? No, it's on your head. Sri Ramakrishna gives the example of a man waking a neighbor up. I want charcoal to light my pipe, and he's walking around with a charcoal stove. Or a person who is using a lantern, and I think it is in St. Paul's Cathedral in London. There's a very famous painting of Christ knocking on a door and holding a lantern. And seek and you will find, knock and the door will be opened unto you. Yes, but you're holding the light already. If Jesus said, I am the light of the world, well, you're holding your light already. So the first lesson in Vedanta is to understand that you're seeking, but the word seeking is only a conventional term. It's only a term that is used for convenience for the time being, because whatever you're looking for will elude you. And because you only seek that which is at a distance, and when you already have it, well, then there's nothing to seek. So all of the recommendations contained in the Bhagavad Gita and all the other scriptures are all aimed at cultivating a situation that gives you faith in what? Faith in yourself. Faith in your own immortal, infinite, invisible self. And so seeking is not the right way of doing things. So spiritual aspirants, we're all spiritual aspirants. We're all apparently seeking for something. But we have to get out of that habit of seeking and understand that, no, we have to cultivate some things. When we cultivate these things, then we're revealing whatever is there. And the way in which we are doing it is to understand that there are three types of evolutionary waves going on. And we have to take the one which is selfless, the one which where purity dominates. Purity means no attachment to the body-mind complex, leaving off the actor-prophet complex, that I'm doing something to get something, or some other kind of drama which is representative of something in absence. So seeking is not the right way of doing, and releasing is the right way. Releasing what you ever have, releasing yourself, because you're already free. It's a bit like in India, you may have seen elephants, and they train them by tying their leg. And then they release the bond from their leg, and the elephant still thinks that it's bound. We're under this illusion that we are bound. We're not. So now everything happens in threes. And the 17th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita goes through everything in threes, including the threefold discipline, threefold tapasya. And when you really boil it down, it's as simple as, let us promote this element of sattva. Will you ever get 100% sattva? No. We cannot operate if it's 100%. We can at least get 51% minimum sattva, 49% other things. So we have to remove the mental obstacles. That's really what all of this discipline is aimed at, and allow the flow to come through. And I imagine there's a flow. Patanjali gives an example of that in his Patanjali Yoga Sutras. He also understands good and bad deeds are not the direct causes of transformations. We simply have to remove the obstacles. And the commentators will tell us it is like a body of water standing at the back, and obstacles are there. We have to remove the obstacles one by one. Now, this is a great, great shift in understanding. And we might say it's intrinsic in Occidental culture to say that we are somehow theologically born with a defect, and we have to make a correction all the time. And we can only be saved by some external force or some external effort. No, we have to do it firstly through our own effort. That applies to everybody. You see, everybody understands one principle, whether they believe in this Vedanta philosophy or in the precepts contained in the Srimad Bhagavad Gita. The principle is that unless you move something yourself, it won't move. By the age of 9, children will understand this. They'll understand that some effort, some self-effort is required. So when you go to school, for example, you see that there's a change in your social transformation. There are now some rules and regulations. Even the Montessori upbringing at the kindergarten level will now say, oh, wait, we haven't got this total creativity. There are some rules that have to be in place. These things you can do and these things you cannot do. You cannot just have total freedom. It is by restricting your freedom and by training the mind that we can remove the obstacles that allow the mind to illuminate what is already there. And so this threefold faith that we have to have is faith in what? Well, firstly, faith in ourselves, faith in Guru, faith in the credible testimony of those that have gone before us, contained in what we call scripture, and faith in the divinity. Threefold tapasya is there, which indicates that we have to have a threefold effort in terms of honoring all those great saints and sages, and honoring what may be summarized as, what is expressed as divine glories everywhere that lead us, indicate to us some principle which is beyond our range of normal experience, that will be revealed to us once we do various things that will promote this element of purity. Purity of thought, purity of action, purity of word, purity of deed. Physical purity is there, and also purity of speech is there, and purity of mind is there also. So we have to remove the mental obstacles. That is our job. We have to allow the flow to come through, like a body of water restrained by a dam wall. We open up the openings, and water by its own nature will flow through. Grace by its own nature is a flowing thing. And so the person who can recognize the particular obstacles which are there in the way and devise a way to pierce through them, this person is really free. They're free already because they're exercising already their own freedom. So your place in the world is seeking you. And therefore you have to relax and wait. When you ask for something, that's a way of seeking, or think that there is a deficit, or think that there is an area that you have to do especially, then the thing, of course, is there already. You don't have to ask and say, when will I get it? When will I get it? Supposing that is to happen in the future, that's a wrong way of thinking, because his law says that when you want something, it's already in the vicinity. This is the cosmic divine law. It's already in the vicinity. It's near at hand. Seek and you will find, this is Jesus' language. And the person gives first and then wakes you up to ask. So the opposite of seeking is waiting. And so all this so-called spiritual discipline is more a question of patiently waiting. Now, this is not blanking off. This is waiting with a sense of alertness and with a sense of full understanding that all we have to do is remove the obstacles by promoting a counter wave continuously. And that in devotional language is called practicing the presence of God. We can see God fully, or see the divine fully, or the infinite invisible, or whatever language you wish to use, the infinite divine. And your automatic reaction will be one of adoration. And if you can hold that vision only theoretically, then you can also do it fully. If you can just hold it as an idea, you can do it fully. You can see that divinity in your neighbor and in your colleagues and other people that you encounter, and you'll cause no harm to anyone. And more importantly, you have to see God in yourself, and you'll not harm yourself. In meditation, you see it in yourself. In your waking life, you see it in others. So the objects can be observed only because the consciousness is here in me. That's the only reason why I can observe all the other things. That divinity didn't enter into one person only or another person only, but into many. Just as one broadcast is made, but you have many transistors that can tune into it, many radio sets that can tune into it. So we should be able to think in this way, that we can get freedom now with this body. So all of these recommendations, 17th chapter and all the rest of it, all of these things really is on this basis we actually can get out, or we can more accurately access our own freedom right here, right now, in this circumstance, with this environment, with this body, with this mind. And there's nothing permanent except the now. So tuning into now is the way, is equivalent to the promoting of sattva. Have right occupation, right thinking. This is the Buddhist language for expressing this. All the knowledge that the human body will ever need for all its activities is contained in any one human cell. And if this knowledge were typed out, then it could probably fill maybe a 1,000-volume encyclopedia. It's contained in your DNA. So all your freedom, all your possibilities are right here and now. Infinite possibilities are there with you now. You have to forget all your old knowledge. So when we know the grandeur and dignity of our own being, then everything we do is then done with confidence, with faith, in other words. Once we understand the greatness and presence of that inner divinity in every cell of the body, once we do that, then we have a kind of cosmic vision of our infinite possibilities. So we have to have an element of faith, but we also have to have an element of hope. Hope is the admission of the negative now. I hope means I don't have it now. It's the opposite of hope, it's doubt. Now this is bad, therefore I hope it will change in the future, is a negative term. But hope in a positive way is really faith. Faith is unwavering conviction. So we have to assert that the divinity is here, so that all the things experienced now, the result of past thoughts, accumulated to this situation that we're in now. And we want to accept the negative, because this world is not based on negatives. It's all based on positives if we discover them properly, if we learn to look for them and discover them. So instead of saying, I do this because it's good, not to drive out the negative, I do this because it is good. We can instead say, I do this because it is good. Not that I do this to drive out the negative. I do this because God made the world, if you want to use biblical language, and saw that it was good. It is only us that see it as bad. We won't react to negativity. We say, I will react to the presence of the divine. There's a much better way of looking at it. So although we can conventionally think of cultivation and spiritual discipline and all of these things, it is all based on this one premise that starts off early in the Bhagavad Gita. You want to study the Bhagavad Gita, second chapter tells you everything, 18th chapter tells you everything, and the rest goes into detail about it. Then there's a question also linked with this that was sent to me, and I'll read this question out. Oh, let us deal with Om Tat Sat as well. Yes, we may as well deal with that as well. So there are vast commentaries on these three words, but let's see. So Om we know as the creative impulse, and so everything that we know of is a variation of this one vibration that we call Om. Tat, that means the what is here and now. It's saying that there is this possibility right here, right now, that we don't worry about time, past or future, but that it means right here, right now. And when we say that, we're talking specifically of Atman. And Sat, it is the only existence which is here. That is why these three terms are used. It summarizes everything that represents completeness. There's a question in text here. People like me, this question says, would have come to spirituality not because we had a burning desire to know God, like Swamiji means Swami Vivekananda, but due to inability to handle a certain phase of life. We'll deal with that question, yes. So having said that things are complete, that actually we should not handle things in a negative way, this question is saying, because we're handling things in a negative way, then we want to get a better situation. We have a pain in life, which we cannot deal with on the human level. We cannot deal through psychotherapy. We cannot deal through any physical upliftment. All we can do is we have to look outside and beyond that. There's something within us that drives us toward perfection. And that something within us is sensitive to things which are blocking us unconsciously. So we know about our own freedom unconsciously. There's that inner drive. Our response is morality. Our response is faith. Our response is movement toward the moral good. Then he says, over a period of time, even though we have got out of that phase, in other words, we've got out of that difficulty, we cling on to spiritual life because we have heard a lot of new good things, perspectives which are useful. Okay. So what he's saying is he's characterizing an adventure in life that starts off with pain. We get out of pain, that's fine. We get through that phase. Of course, that phase may come and go. We cannot completely get out of it. The nature of nature itself is ups and downs. But we can deal with the downs much more philosophically if we have a good formula. And the good formula is being held by those who have mastered whatever there is to master. And so we cling on to the spiritual life because we have heard a lot. In fact, it's not a question of clinging on to spiritual life. It's a question of clinging on to the concept of spiritual life, not necessarily the practice of it. Because we have heard a lot of new good things, perspectives which are useful. Okay, so we won't do something. We won't have a motivation to do something, ordinarily speaking, unless we're avoiding a loss or gaining some benefit. Well, that's okay. In the beginning of spiritual life, it's good to outline the benefit. There's nothing against the theological concept. Well, you see, if you do something good, you get a reward in the afterlife. If you do something bad, there are consequences. And the variations of that need not be post-mortem. They can be in this life. This is called karma. You see, you'll get some good reward, some good benefit, or some bad benefit. It's entirely up to you. So to avoid something bad, you maintain a good life, a good moral life, a decent moral life, but it won't give you a freedom. It won't give you a freedom because there is some short-term motive that is going with this. What is the long-term motive? It is driven by a strong desire for freedom that intensifies it. The more the pain intensifies. Pain is a useful thing. The Bhagavad Gita's first chapter is a very useful chapter. The despondency of Arjuna is based on pain. Some people come to me, oh Swamiji, I am in depression. Good, blessed are you. You've started your spiritual journey. And so, yes, there's a motive, first of all, to get out of pain. Secondly, to gain some benefit, additional benefit. His analysis is very good. Then he says, but at some point in time, he says, we should have certain fundamental questions and drives which help us to have that drive alive in spiritual life. Yes, simply doing something to get some benefit itself will be imprisoning because it is based on this egoism, and egoism is an obstacle. The sense of I itself is not an obstacle. The identification with the results of your actions is a trap, is a bondage. The identification of yourself with the body-mind complex, this is a bondage. So how we get this freedom, this liberation, how do we break this? We break it through a certain strategy. Two strategies are available to us. One is to see the divinity in everyone and not just to see it as an impersonal thing, but to personalize it deeply so that we have a real connection with that divinity in the other. This is the one way. The second way, this is a devotional way, the second way is to see that there is the objectivity of the universe is made up from so many different fragments and components. And to be able to see that this is held together and is also acting as a revealing factor for a divine flow of grace that operates through it, that is evidenced by the movement of life. And there we see this grace operating in all hands, on all heads, on all eyes, and all limbs, in all the fragments that we see that coordinate to make a unity of existence. We see the flow. This is the other way of doing it. Then he says, for example, he says, in your lecture, you had mentioned, whatever the lecture was, whenever it was, you had mentioned about the question of who is the doer behind all the actions? Well, this is a way of analyzing it in relation to the question of consciousness. Consciousness will demand the question, who is the knower? Who knows it? And what is the real doer of all actions? The real doer of all actions is nature itself, not us. Because the fundamental I in us does not do anything, but by its presence, things are done. Now, we all have to understand this in one way or another, in any variation of it that we can catch. And so he puts this example, are there, he says, here's the final question, are there other fundamental questions that help us to keep the search or the drive alive? Or are there any other fundamental questions and answers, we assume, that help us to keep the search drive? Well, the idea of search, as I mentioned before, has to go away. But the drive means I have to constantly remember this divinity, and this is called practicing the presence. So, first of all, I have to be systematic in spiritual practice. I have to make sure that I am sitting in meditation for japa, prayer, and meditation at set times of the day, if that is possible. And because of irregularities in our life, then if we cannot deal with it, if we cannot allocate time to it at same set times, then at least we should allocate some time that is available to us morning and evening, at least that much. Ideally, more than that. But there should be a constant feeling that there is a divine presence that walks with me constantly all the time. So the whole of the Bhagavad Gita is replete, really, and every other scripture is replete as a kind of operating manual to tell us what we should do. And it is not just a question of living a moral and ethical life. An atheist will come up with the idea and say, you know what, I live a good, upstanding, moral and ethical life, nothing wrong with me. But that is just maintenance. There's something extra we have to do. And the questioner is asking, is there something that will help us or remind us or motivate us to sustain our way of thinking? Well, practice is the way. We can apply this to anything. Let us say we want to be proficient in a certain sport. Then we have to practice. Let us say we want to be proficient in mastering a musical instrument. Then we have to practice it. Now, it's a very good analogy. Let us take, for example, a child learning for the first time to play a piano. The first thing that might happen is a lack of faith in themselves. They might have a doubt. I don't know if I can do this. With the help of a piano teacher, and that comes regularly, that gives me homework to practice. And repeat. Practice means repetition. Repetition of what? In the spiritual sense, repetition of a mantra, repetition of a sense of discernment, where we're constantly seeing the divine flowing through everything. That is not taking anything for granted. I think we all have to wake up in the morning at some point in time, and we all have the opportunity of experiencing our environment in different ways. And our environment consists of our personal environment, which is our physical environment. Then there's the inner world of our thought environment, our mental environment. And then there is the environment external to the senses. And all of them are available for a sense of wonder, a sense of adoration and thankfulness. The problem is we didn't observe it correctly. We took it for granted. Our mind was too much preoccupied, possibly with future activities, or commiserating over past, and forgetting this present moment. And in this present moment, we find our own inherent full freedom, not even partial. It is in this eternal now that we find it. It is to tune it into that. And in that now, constantly tuning. This is called Abhyasa Yoga, that is, bringing the mind constantly back to a state of remembrance. And in this, we find a state of delight, and the delight itself is a motivating factor. You might say, isn't that also selfish, that we want to get the blissful reward of this? In the beginning, this might be true. But as we get into this delightful zone constantly, as we are accustomed to constantly tuning into this flow, then blissfulness becomes an expression, not something to get. It is not seen as a reward, it's seen as a natural condition. And in this naturalness, we continuously tune into this and watch for moments where the mind or the attention goes out of tune. And when we notice that, we take it and tune it back again. This constant tuning it back again is the guiding game of thought, the guiding game of thoughtfulness, the guiding game of taking your attention and constantly, cheerfully, sportingly, lovingly tuning it back into the divine fullness. And getting, as a result, this bliss, which those who are constantly doing it and who are saying, you should do it, by the way. The Brihadaranyaka Upanishad gives us, the Taittiriya Upanishad gives us rankings of bliss. It gives us so many orders of magnitude of bliss, emphasizing the fact that actually, no matter what blissful thing you experience, the bliss of the self, who has discovered this internal bliss, is equivalent to any bliss you like, ranging from simple joy to absolutely ecstatic rapture. So it is this constant tuning that is cyclical in the sense that we get the reward of bliss on the one hand, and bliss encourages us to get more on the other, like a bee constantly driven to sipping honey or gathering nectar, like the animal that always seeks water at the water hole, like the peacock in Ramakrishna's example that always seeks the opium. So if we have to have some kind of addiction, we may as well have some addiction to divine nectar and get used to it without attending to all the negatives, without saying I have to block something out, or I have to combat something, or I have to struggle against something. Simply filling the mind with our own blissful nature and observing it everywhere and taking advantage of our observations so that we are continuously tuned in. The mind is in a constant flow of continuous tuning to our own blissful nature, resulting continuously to our blissful base. And we have the opportunity in meditation of doing this very directly. We have the opportunity of contacting this absolutely directly to the point of absorption. And this then carries us through our life. To see this in oneself, we can do this in meditation. But when we get up and work, or get up and engage with other people or places and events, we have the opportunity of seeing this in others. And it is the seeing this in others that provides us with an attitude of a response This is Vedanta in action. This is non-dualism in action. Seeing this oneness in everyone and appreciating that if it wasn't for that, speech would not be possible, mind would not operate, body would not operate. When we see in one section, the 17th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, there we find, for example, the threefold nature of food. We find the threefold nature of tapasya, the threefold nature of all these things. Because every aspect of life consists of these three ingredients of sattva, rajas, and tamas. And the bottom line, in other words, the main ingredient towards spiritual life, if you will, is simply wherever we find the mind engaged in a gear of rajas and tamas, we elevate it to sattva, like driving a car with a manual gear. We notice, oh, it is in tamas. Oh, let us shift it up to rajas. Oh, it is in rajas. Let us shift it up to sattva. Play a game like that of continuously shifting our attention upward, upward, upward. And by the way, enjoying the smoothness of the ride, if you will, if you want to use the analogy of a car. So that means that the roughness in our life is only due to our lack of shifting our gear upward. It's our own responsibility. We cannot blame any external factors for it. We cannot blame negative vibrations for it. We cannot blame other people for it. We cannot blame other events or ifs or buts. If or but in the English language always needs to be replaced. If only, you see. If only I was born under a lucky star. Or I could do it, but, and there's an excuse. You can do it. You have your own infinite possibilities within you. We can do anything. If one person can do it, everybody can do it. If a Christ can heal a leper, everybody can do it. If a Christ has an internal wiring that sees perfection in the other and doesn't see the physical condition and creates a transformation as a result, we can all do it. One person having done it, we can all do it. We just have to exert our internal possibility and bypass all the negative ways of thinking, which naturally beset the mind because of our wrong interpretation or understanding of the world. We have to continuously understand the world for what it is. And we have so many inputs toward it that assist us in this day and age, which we might not have had it previously. Science, modern science is a way. Modern science shakes our sense of reality. It tells us, yes, you may think it's a table and a chair, you may think it's a person, you may think it's speech, you may think the person offends, you may think you take offense, but actually all of this boils down to an unknown, boils down to a level of possibilities, probabilities, uncertainties. It is an undefined world. It is not a deterministic world, but it looks like that on the surface. But we're only seeing the crest of a wave. We're only seeing the superficial crust of it. We're seeing the tip of the iceberg. We're not seeing the deep iceberg which sits below the water hidden. We're only seeing the leaf of a tree and the branches with all their complexities. We're not seeing the deep source of the roots below the soil. So our vision is limited, and we have to continuously persuade ourselves of this and encourage ourselves to look all the time deeper or further. We have to look further. When we look into somebody's eyes or look at their smile, our mind needs to be taken within to see. It is a divine smile that is coming out, and it is the light, divine light that is shining through our eyes, regardless of what people say, regardless of what comes out of people's mouths, regardless whether we interpret it in an insulting way or a praise way. And so this balance of pairs of opposites is obtained by seeing underneath. When we see underneath, we see the glory shining through in all these aspects. What is the result of it? Pure love. Love comes from this. And even love unconsciously comes from this. Even human love comes from this, or love of things come from this. This whole question of love is it's not that it's unrelated to divine love. It's completely related to it. It's an expression of it. So that when we look toward it, we're seeing something much deeper than just the superficiality of it. Because the superficiality of it will last only as long as time and space permit. Because everybody will come and go, and there are no permanent habitats. As long as we see things in the framework of time and space, we can see that it's impermanent. This is what is meant by viveka. This is what is meant by the process of not this, neti, neti, neti. It is simply eliminating things on the one side, but it is asserting a permanency on the other. Don't think it is just negation. It is also affirmation. Something is there. Something is there that is solid, that is permanent, that never changes. And that has a solid nature, that has a purity of existence to it. It is Om Tat Sat. It is that only existence. There's no other existence. It is the only existence that doesn't change. What is our difficulty? We misunderstand and misinterpret the temporal and the spatial for something that is fixed. It's a phenomena that enables us to live and work and enact this drama that we call life. Without this, we cannot do it. But at some point or other, nature itself will inspire us. We don't have to look for artificial ways of doing it. Nature itself will inspire us. Nature itself will impose disappointment, a sense of failure, and pain on us to the extent that it will inspire us in a new direction and look for a different formula. This formula is not working. We have to look for another one and identify what obstacles are there and how will we get around them. So we can't crash into them, nor can we run away from them. We have to find a different way around them and make sure that we do it not as an arduous thing, not as a struggle, but as something like a delightful exercise built on the idea that at the end of the day, when a student starts playing the piano, they will be delighted with the result. There are many students who take up an instrument like the piano in their youth will be in one of two categories. They will either persist and practice and practice and practice and master the instrument. And so as they grow in this progressively, they find a delight in it. It's no longer an arduous task, doing scales endlessly. There are some very inspiring musicians around, instrumentalists, and you ask them, how did you get to this level of proficiency? They say, we took a simple tune and day and night, we practiced it. So it is the same in everything we want to master. That is practice. We have to relentlessly practice. In the beginning, it may look like a struggle. So we begin with the necessity to have faith in our capacity to master. That is the first level of faith. And then as we practice more and more, that faith in ourselves and our capacity and our ability gets stronger. And so in doing that, we overcome the initial impulse of fear. Because this lack of faith, this doubt comes with the fear. Fear, maybe I won't be able to do this. I mentioned there are two types of students. One type of student persists. The other type of student gives up very quickly. I can't do this. Let me find something else to do. They get bored very easily. So it does require some persistence that goes with it, with the understanding, what if I can play? What if I have the enthusiasm to do it? What if freedom is a worthwhile goal? And we have to continuously convince ourselves of this. That is why we read scripture. That is why we read inspiring lives of saintly people. That is why we have teachers. That is why we have the experience of other people, in the form of scriptures. That is why we attend these kinds of talks. It is not just, hopefully, not just waffling, empty air. Hopefully there's a practical message you can take with you that inspires you from week to week to say, yes, tomorrow is a new day. And tomorrow, not just tomorrow, but this moment, I'll make use of every single second. And so we go from fear to faith and ultimately to freedom. 3 F's, if you will, for ease of memory. From fear, we overcome fear. Why? We supplant it with faith in ourselves, faith in our capacity, our ability, and ultimately freedom. So we start off with a simple tune and scales on a piano. And ultimately, after so many years, something significantly shifts. There's a great musician who describes this, that in the beginning of playing a musical instrument, a child, for example, will play and they'll nod their head in line with certain notes that are being played. And then at a certain stage, the connection with the notes increases until ultimately one note flows into the other and there's a smoothness, and without even looking, they can look away and have a conversation and still keep playing. And same thing with driving a car. You don't even think about it. You automatically shift the gears and you are naturally responsive to any emergency around you because you're continuously alert. But the unconscious mind is doing the driving, largely speaking. And the attention is looking out for potential things, no doubt. But shifting of the gears becomes automatic. The feet on the pedals becomes automatic. Same thing playing a musical instrument, it becomes an automatic thing through practice. And practice will create the coordination, which in the beginning you might have thought was impossible. How can I possibly coordinate 2 hands together and 2 feet together? Yes, you can do it. But it requires practice. And practice, no doubt, requires self-motivation. There is short-term motivation, and that is reward and punishment, or gain and loss, and that will only last a short while. But the self-motivation comes when we understand our deepest nature is Om Tat Sat. That is our deepest nature. Understanding that and really understanding it will be a self-motivating factor. We won't have to look further than that. So I'll wait and see if there are any more questions on this line, and I hope I've answered and been helpful to you.
So just to be sure to understand, Swami, so when they say the Om Tat Sat is just further motivation to go further, deeper in the faith and to continue the practice in a way.
Yes, because Om Tat Sat is not just a motivator or something that encourages, it's a statement of fact. Understanding it as a statement of fact automatically motivates you. Contemplating what is the meaning of this, if you read the commentators on that particular statement, you'll see it summarizes the whole of our permanent existence, where we realize, oh, I see. Literally speaking, Om, that existence, Om, that truth. Is the relative world true? Well, it's a in as much as it is a manifestation of this Om, yes. But you see, this Om Tat Sat will tell us everything there is to know. Everything there is to know behind time and space and all the things that comprise our world. And our whole drive is to realize the truth of that. If there are no other questions, then we'll leave it at that. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. Good. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Swami.
Thank you, Swamiji. That was very helpful. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Swami.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Om